Mr. Antal will share to you the rise of the sovereign state.
Santo.
Hello, good morning everyone.
Good morning, Jackie Lab.
Hi, sir. Especially to our teacher, Sir Ayan, sir, good morning. Today, ang akong i-discuss is all about the kuan sa is all about the medieval Europe or in the Middle Age of the Europe. In medieval Europe, international politics consists of a complicated pattern of overlapping jurisdiction and loyalties. Mura siya kani siya nga na kuan medieval Europe is kanang na-start siya sa kuan 15th century, and then ato nga time naay duha ka gapamuno, which is the church and the empire. The church was the spiritual authority with its center in Rome. The church is occupy a crucial role in the cultural and intellectual life of Middle Age. Ang church sila ang murag sa control bitaw sa kanang batas sa una, kay wala pa man tayo mga government, and then ila is gipaagi nila og spiritual kuan kanang murag semi religious, and then ang isa is the empire, and then kani siya nga nahimo kuan ni siya sa Rome, sakop siya sa Europe, and then the empire known as the Holy Roman Empire was established in 10th century in the central predominantly German speaking Europe. A Holy Roman Empire is based compared to loosely structured federation of many hundreds of separate politics units. And then kani siya, ang empire is kanang murag gatunga sila og kanang power sa church. And then suddenly murag nag-away-away sila kay tungod sa power nga na ilang gaawayan, and then the new state simultaneously set themselves in opposition to popes and emperor on the universal level, and the feudal lord peasant asserted in other roles on the local level. So na siya duha ka set, and then ang kuan mo ni diri ang kanang church sa kuan universal sila, ang gapamuno is popes and then emperors, and then sa local mo ni ang feudal lords, peasant, and the other ruler level. And then pagka 16th century mo to nag-away na sila based ako na sabtan sa kansa, and then nag-away na sila, and then ang church nag-split apart na, and then all over northern Europe the new Protestant churches become state-run and church lands become property of state. Magsimi nag-ilog na sila sa katong laging kuan nila kanang power. And then kato nga time sa medieval Europe pa ang mga kuan nato mga kings, wala pa sila yung mga sakto nga mga armies, mga powerless pa sila. Maong kato ilang mga kuan ang ilang mga tao mo'y nagkuan sa ila unsa kanang murag simi mga slaves nila mo'y nakipag-away, and then in order to establish themselves securely in their own position of power, the kings rejected traditional claims of all local authorities. Ang ilahara is kanang ilahara gyud bitaw masunod nga mga rule. Wala na sila gakuan sa mga kanang murag simi individual. This led to extended war in next to the European countries. So moto nagpadayod ang war tungod sa wala nagkasinabot, and then daghan na nga matay ato, and then kuan pod kayo ang mga kuan nato mga kings kay grabe lang tax nga gipangayo mong wala pod nakauyon ang mga kuan mga peasant nagprotesta gid sila, and then katupod nga time wala pa ang mga kings ato mo lagi to powerless pa, no proper bureaucracy in their disposal of the armies few way of raising money. And then pag-abot sa 16th century onward pataas na, states established the rudiment of administrative system and raised armies. So murag diha na kuan sa mga kuan kings nga mag magkuan na sila, mag-separate na, mag-iiyan na sila og kanang mga laws inana kay para di na sila magubots, and then mag-build na sila og kalingon nga kanang magsibing empire jud kay para in terms sa mga gira-gira nana sila pang defense. And then mo na din to ni kuha na dayon na kada isa ka empire or state nanay isa ka leader, dili na para sa una nga as a whole nation ang church ra ang gakuan ga unsa na ga rule. And then early modern Europe was the golden age of political economy. During this period, the economy was not taught Diyan, wala akong internet.
Jackie Lab.
Hello? Ay, nara.
Nara ka.
Ay, nakaba.
Just
And
continue.
then, the early modern Europe,
Yes, continue. Just continue.
mo na gitawag na the golden age of political economic. Murag, diha na din nga discover ang mga, murag simigi, tagaan na nila og kanang chance ang mga kuan nga mo open up or kanang yang mga open-minded ila nang gipang dawat mo tong murag nahimong na intelligent na murag na unsa na natawhan na sila nga dapat ang individual pwede pod magkuan og kanang opinion para ang ilang is budako pa, and then mo to nag economic development meant higher revenue from taxes and give the king access more resources which they could use in their war. Amo din to din taas na din ilang kuan, nangita na din sila og kanang mga information nga ma-improve pa ilang society. Pwede ka panawag. Wala akong data.
Okay, continue. Nawala siya?
Nawala siya, sir, kay naday nanawag. Nawala daw yung data.
Who will report next, Ira? Ikaw?
Si leader pa naman, sir,
Mary
Mary
Rose.
Rose.
So mo to iyang pasabot sir nga paabot sa early modern Europe, this is what we call the golden age of economy. So various nga mga sciences na discover na nabuhat para sa mga daghan ma-discover or mga innovation para na sila magamit sa ilaha or magamit nila as their access or resources kung naay war or na sila ma-defend from the other states.
Hello? Ano na?
Okay, Jackie Lab, continue.
Yes sir, mana to siya sir, mo tong tawag sa kanang sovereign state is kanang murag kada kuan na kada states iya na og kanang dumala bitaw. For example, ang kuan ang Rome is ang taga Rome ra pud ang magkuan kanang mag-rule, dili na bitaw nga basta una nga as a whole ang church ang magsigsundon-sundon, and then murag ilang gina-abuse silang power, and then mura po sila na intelligent na tungod sa mga new discoveries nila para ma-improve po nila economic. And then as a whole na sila mura sila kanang European kanang karon nga murag ASEAN nga na sila as a whole isa sila ka lugar pero kanang isa ka grupo pero iya sila og kanang manage sa ilang country, and then murag siminalan nana lang day boundary ba individual na ilang pagkuan mana siya sir.
Are you done, Jackie Lab? Who will report next? The Westphalian system.
Okay, sir. Supposed to be ang ma-report ani is katong kauban naman super wala man siya nagtunga. So ako na lang
So,
mag-report.
okay.
Oo.
Continue.
So the Westphalian system. So kining Westphalian system of 1648, no, which conclude the 30 years of warfare, has to come to symbolize the new way of organizing international politics. Meaning, sa ingani nga system dako no, na ay new way kung unsaon pag-organize ang international politics. Dahil gipasibot po diri sa Westphalian system nga, ang tanan states were sovereign. Meaning, they lead claims to exclusive right to rule their own territories. Like for example, wait lang sir. Okay, like so mo to siya. Ang tanan daw ko ng states were sovereign, meaning they lead claims to exclusive right to rule their own territories. So like for example, ang territory ni Sir Ayan, so iharagid na siya nga territory. Siya ra ang mag-rule na dira og wala na ilain pang territory nga mag-angkon ana nga territory. So that is what we call it self-governing, sovereign. And also, they also have the right to have connection po sa laing lugar. And it was stated that all states were formally equal. All states were formally equal and they had the same rights and obligations. So mani ang ginapasabot sa Westphalian system. No, kanang equal na ang tanan, kanang wala na mag-over pa sa power, wala na mas labaw, patas tanan. And then, ang Westphalian Treaty also has come also no nga, no one is superior to another state. And everyone is the same. Everyone has the right. No, ingana siya. That's called the so-called self-governing. So mato siya. Pero kini nga system nagka-conflict gyapon siya pag abot sa anarchy. So, kung moingon tag anarchy, kung diha lang sa imuhang nasod, no, imong lugar, no, it refers to the breakdown of law and order. Walay mga laws nga ginapatupad. Pero, pag in relation na sa laing state, no, the power is decentralized and there are no shared institution with the right to enforce common rules. No, which is magka-conflict gid siya sa sovereignty. Kay kinaingon ba sa sovereign nga all states were formally equal. No, they had the right and same rights and obligation man nya kung sa anarchy decentralized na ang power and then there are no shared institution which the right to enforce common rules. Yung matingalan na lang jud ka nga kanang makaingon ka nga abi ko bag free. O patas tanan nya pag-abot sa international naa man lagi gabuot sa atoa. O yung ana mo na nagka-conflict sa anarchy. So at the same time na develop gyapon yung practice sa diplomacy. So, naapil diri, no, including the France, Spain, Austria, England, Russia, and Ottoman Empire. So, that diplomacy means that there is a maintaining good relations between states. good relation between sa government sa lain-lain nga countries, and then mo to siya na these practices na embrace siya during the 17th century. Umoto siya na yung apil na ang France, Spain, Austria, and England. So, mato siya ang ginapasabot sa Westphalian system. So, Ira, ikaw na sunod.
So good morning. An international system. In the course of the 19th century, the state was transformed into a nation state in which, in theory, at least the people as a whole were in charge. So dari nga dari nga period, dari nga century, nahimo na siyang nation state. Then palihog na lang dayon ko. Next slide. Okay. So, state was defined specifically a political and geopolitical entity in which dayon ang kanilang nation is a cultural and ethnic one. Tapos kung ikuan na to sila, i-combine na to sila, nation and state, it was an ideal in which cultural boundaries match up with the political boundaries. It was also independent and sovereign government, which ang kanabitang, for example, matawag na to nation state kung ang isa ka particular place kay naa siya iyahang kaugalingon nga territory, and at the same time ang iyahang mga naa siya large number of people which ga-share sila same culture, same practice, and etc. So next slide, palihog. So, man next. So, there is a slide. Pa-assist sa kung Mary Rose, gadget lang. Mary Rose.
Yes, I.
Pa-assist ako.
Saon sa man?
Dito kang abok. Itong next slide, nakuan ko, nawala ko.
Ay, sa wait.
Sugdi sa gani.
So, already in 1792, confrontation began between the revolutionary French nation and the kings of the rest of the Europe. So, Napoleon Bonaparte, naman ni siyang French general, mo'y nag-name sa katong Napoleonic War. So, mo ni siya ang beginning sa Napoleonic War, and was the extreme war they had, and by which the Holy Roman Empire dissolved sila from the Napoleonic conquest and come to an end. So, after naman ang Napoleonic War, na-develop ang settlement, which is the Congress of Vienna. Imo na ni ay? Ira. So, the Congress of Vienna, where a settlement was reached at the end of the Napoleonic War. Ug diri, so ako nasabtan is ginasahan nila nga balik tong Europe from its revolutionary ways. No, the Congress of Vienna was also to provide a long-term plan for long-term peace plan for Europe. And No. All over Europe, national communities demanded to include into the politics of their respective countries. And so, kung ang tanan daw different people mag-gain ng right to determine their own fate, so the map of Europe will have to be radically redrawn, meaning mabalik siya into the way it used before. Then every people demanded the right to rule themselves. Ira,
Yes, Nana. Di ba dayon?
dili ni mo ang part.
Dili pa.
Imo nga part dapit.
Dito na. Balik. Balik. Dira na. So, mana ka dito sa kang abok, no?
Oo.
Okay, so, although the nationalist revolution were defeated on 1848 by the politic establishment, still, imposible kayo sila nga makontrol. And at the same time, they still speak the language of nationalism, in which the Finns wanted to be an independent Finland, the Bulgarian wanted an independent Bulgaria, and then so on. And then by the 1861, the Italy were too long separated into city and state. Wait lang. City-state, niya ginadumala sila sa church. And then, kana bali nga na hitabo, it was just the conclusion of the First World War in 1918. So after the First World War, most people in Europe formed their own nation state. So, dito balik. Sige. Dira, kana. As a result of the nationalist revolution, the European international system became the first truly international system. So sila bali ang pinakauna nga nahimong international system, maski ang international itself was coined only in 1783 by the British philosopher Jeremy Bentham. And the nation state claimed the same right to sovereignty, which means that they were formally equal to each other. So kaning ang example ani is the European Union, in which natawag man sila karon nga international, nga naa sila 27 ka countries nga nabilong parehas ra pud siya sa ASEAN, in which nga na-appeal ka sa ASEAN country, tapos kana siya nga union, kana siya nga system gi-create na siya kay para magkuan, para mas mapaspas ang trading, para mas naa sila'y laban in kasong magkagubot na sad. Kaya ang ilahang ginatuuhan, next up, palihog. At the time, great hopes were associated with the increase in trade. Kaya ani man gud ang purpose man gud sa ilahang gi-create nga kuan nga kaning European Union, ay ilahan naman gina-practice ang international system, in which allowed ang tao nga bilong ana nga union nga moadto sa laing country freely magtrabaho dadto, mag-trade, mag-visit lang for vacation, mga nga na allowed sila as long as ang ilahang ginasudlan nga boundary is under ra pod dadto sa European Union. Nya tapos gi-create ni siya nga system because kay ingon pa ni Adam Smith sa The Wealth of nation in 1776, a nation is rich not because it has a lot of natural resources, but because it it has the capacity to manufacture things that others want. Ingana bali ang purpose nga nung ingana ilang sistema. Talagog next. Tapos pagkakuan adto, okay na kayo ang tanan, na plaster na equal na, okay ang trading, okay ang kanang pamahala. But then nanay nahatagan sila bag-o nga hope mo na ta nga okay na nanay peace. Pero by the 20th century, most of these liberal hopes were dashed. Kay na misunderstood nga ang nation state kay parehas ra ka violente, parehas ra ka kalain sa modern state, which is dili tinuod. Kay layo ra kaayo ang modern state nga pamaagi sa nation state. Diri na din nagsugod nga gisugdan na dayon sa nagsugod na dayon tungod ani nga misunderstanding, nagsugod na dayon ang Second World War katong nagbomba ang mga Germany dadto sa Japan, tapos nisukol na dayon ang mga France. Tapos tungod ana nga misunderstanding, imagine kana lang nga misunderstanding between 1939 and 1945, over 60 million katao ang namatay. Tapos around 2 nga mo kwan siya equivalent siya sa 2.5% of the world's population. Ingana kadaghan ang nawala tungod lang sa gamay kayo nga bikil, tungod lang sa gamay kayo nga misunderstanding sa isa ka pamaagi nga okay na dapat lahi lang ang pagsabot. So this figure included the 6 million Jews exterminated by Germany in the Holocaust, which was one of the worst genocides in recorded history. After the Second World War, the military competition continued between the United States and the Soviet Union, known as Cold War.
Soviet Union.
Soviet Union, known as Cold War. Next. Naay ikaadayon si Meroros ana nga report.
Naman na kaay. So, after the Second World War, nagpadayon gyapon ang war which is gitawag na siya og Cold War. O na madala na siya sabot-sabot. So, diri na ta sa European and the rest of the world. So, katong nahitabo before, katong mga war between sa Europeans, mga states, sa ilahara to. So, diri, we will see kung unsa nahitabo sa Europeans sa other countries. So, before, mo to siya, during the 19th century, most of what happened in Europe is ilara tong aside, and it was just a marginal relevance to the people elsewhere. So in this chapter, we will go beyond the Europe and the rest of the world, specifically in what happened in East Asia and America and the rest of the world. So before, dako kayong kasuya sa mga Europeans, sa mga East Asian. Dili lang tungod sa spices, no, tungod po sa mga exotic commodities. So, kini pod nga time, when Marco Polo started publish his travel in Asia, but nakuha interest sa mga Europeans nga moadto sa Asia. In this time, ang Portuguese may nag-lead sa trade, but it was soon replaced by the Dutch. Yet sa pagbalik sa mga Europeans, na-amaze sila sa mga na-amaze sila sa East Asia. So it was said nga mas quite organized ang East Asia kaysa European states. No, in terms of their international politics, lahi sila sa Europe. No, apil na diri, lahi po diri ang katong Indian subcontinent, Central Asia, lahi sila sa Europe. And katong pag-ato sa mga Europeans sa Asia, sa East Asia, no, na-criticize sila sa mga Asian nga they were just a small contingent of traders, no. Adto ra sila dito tungo sa ilang gusto, and then they left, no. Ang mga rulers po sa East Asia is mas powerful pa sila sa rulers sa European. And sa side sa East Asian, gadaghan o ga-increase ang trade, mas maayo o mas importante sa ilaha. So, mo na siyang sa side sa East Asia. While katong mga Europeans nga nag-colonize ito sa America were more violent. So, diri na tas sa America. So, Europeans were far more ruthless. The European invasion was associated with widespread genocide. So, with widespread genocide ngayon na po in North and South nga, daghan kay civilians ang nangamatay. Isa pa reason nga, ang pag-spread sa diseases like katong measles, which is nagahinay-hinay bitaw nga kamatay ang civilians before. Also po nga katong pag-colonize sa Americans pag-colonize sa Europeans dito sa America, kaya nakita po nila nga walay bili bisan ilaang mga hayop, mga animals dili man magamit, no. Kato ganing pag-abot nila sa America, ay pa na-discover sa Americans nga magamit di ang kabayo ingana. And in the Africa, meanwhile, this was unknown for Europeans, unknown pa sa mga Europeans tong continent sa Africa. And at the end of the 18th century, no, towards the end of the 19th century, other countries, wait lang, nawala. So at the end of the 18th century, new ways of manufacturing goods were invented. As a result, so this was called as the Industrial Revolution. So the economic imperatives meant that Europeans took renewed interest in world trade because nakita man nila nga kulang ilang materials, and then mas kailangan pa nila materials nga nasa laing country. So kini nga trade it was in Britain that Industrial Revolution had started, and the British. So they established commercial outposts from Canada to South Africa and Australia. But it was India that became most important colony. So important kay sa ilaha sa ang India, it because ang mga British, no, nakadala sila mga good textile, rice, no? And then ang mga producer na paid sila for them in a normal way. Mo nang ganan sila sa importante kay sa ila ang India. And towards the end of the 19th century, other European countries joined in this scramble of colonies, not in least in Africa. And the most obvious result of the Congress and nationalists So the most obvious result of the Congress and nationalist yearnings was a new and general scramble of colonies in other parts of the world in the late 19th century. And pagka-end sa 19th century, another European countries joined the scramble of colonies. Sumoto na towards the end of 19th century na ay no pagka-end sa 19th century, other European countries joined the scramble of the colonies. Ang France added West Africa and Indochina to its growing empire. And the Germans and the Italians also joined the race once their respective countries were unified, in which, as countries begin in unification of the world, this was brought about the age by which is the beginning of the complex system, in which karon kita mo na niya tong gipuy-an. We live our modern world, the making of the modern world. But this was not a European state and European way of organizing international relation came to spread the rest of the world. We all have differences from the other world. Wala ilahi taog ko pamaraan. So mo to siya, pagka-end sa 19th century, niapil na ang mga West Africa and Indochina sa mga empire. So katong uban nga mga states sa Europeans so mapod ni siyang reason why nga during sa First World War, most part of the world were in Europe hands. And what was the point of colonialism? So,
Are you done, Mary Rose?
wait lang, sir. So, money ang explanation why during the First World War in 1940, most ng mga countries or mga states kay naa sa European hands. But this was not how European state and European way of organizing international relation came to spread the rest of the world. A colonized country is a very opposite of a sovereign state. The colonized peoples had no nation states and enjoyed no self-determination. It was instead through the process of liberating themselves from colonizer that Europeans models were occupied. Now, they have their respective territories and fortified borders, they have their own capitals, armies, foreign ministries, national anthems, and all other paraphernalia of European states. So dili ra ko tama, sir.
So, napay next, wala na. Or conclusion. Do you have a conclusion?
Ira, ikaw pag-conclude.
So, in conclusion, isot lang ha. Okay, ito siya. Ito may conclude.
Based on your readings or based on your report, how did no, internationalization started?
Ano to, sir?
Based on your report, okay, how did internationalization started? Because we are talking, our subject is international relations, di ba? In the most simplest terms, di ba? How did IR started?
Nag-start ang international relations, sir, kay tungod sa
Tungod
sa ako
sa?
lang nasabtan kay tungod sa ilahang hope ba nga magka-peace. Nga na peace bitaw may
That's
tabo after sa war.
uh-huh. What war? We're talking here.
Una kay nag-start
What's
ang
this?
wala nagkadimao nga Dadto man jud na nagsugod ang kagubot, sir, dadto sa katong ang namahala pa lang kay ang church ug ang empire.
Mm-hmm.
Hangtod sa nasundan na dayon sa edit lang ha. Kay dadto pa lang daan kay dili naman good equal ang gakahitabo, sir ba. Wala nay kay ang church ug ang empire ang nahitabo manana kay bali ang mga peasants or ang mga slaves. Adjut lang. Kadjut lang.
Okay, so anyways, I will give you a brief explanation later. So thank you so much, Group One. Okay, this group is led by Miss Mary Rose Anyora, no? So my impression to your group, okay, I can really see that you naningkamot yun, no? There is an effort on the part of the group despite of the no, despite of the challenges in terms of your internet connection. Not all group members, as what Mary Rose informed me, ang uban walay laptop, but of course it's not a problem kung walay gadgets, no? Walay laptop, no, naman may cellphone, then na may uban group members nga naay may laptop. So katong naay group member nga or member sa group na naay laptop, siya lay mag-share sa screen, ano mag-share sa screen, then the rest of course you will look at your cell phone. And then that's why I told you you really need to practice, no, before the presentation, because we will meet only once a week naman. So prior to the presentation, I would really urge each group to really practice in your presentation. Yeah. So that there is proper preparation in every group. Okay. And then maybe kay mugbo ra man yung topic, no. So you can maximize only 30 minutes siguro, 30 to 35 minutes kay sa inyohang presentation, or 30 to 40 minutes muna na, because we will meet only 1 hour per meeting, so that 30 to 40 minutes presentation, then we will have Q&A for 20, or I will give my feedback to your presentation, and as well as I'll give you a summary of your presentation. And then And then I would advise for the remaining 8 groups to, or every one of you to stay in a place with less noise so that dili kayo maka-disturb ang noise or background noise sa mag-present, no? Especially if you are a presenter. Kindly stay in a less noisy nga lugar. Although we cannot nga of course nang yung mga mananap no nga gapang tingog bisagaha di man nato makontrol, but as much as possible please stay in a less noise nga lugar. And then I would like to ask every group every after your presentation to upload your PowerPoint in our Facebook group, okay? So that those who are not able to join the class, they can um, see or download your presentation. Although this is every presentation is recorded, then I will be uploading this right after this meeting in YouTube, and I will post the link in our Facebook group as well as in Google Classroom. Okay, and then so that you can also review on your or review the presentation for your kanang preparation for the midterm and final exam. And then yes, you really need to practice no in your presentation. This is for you to have good grade. And then yeah, I just wanted to remind again to, if you're not the presenter, just mute your microphone all throughout the presentation, unless later on, if you have questions or clarifications that you want to address to me or to the presenters, you can do that. Okay, right after the presentation. Na. And then, if you're not a presenter, I would really advise you to read, okay, the topic so that or the report prior to attending the class so that you can connect with the with the report. Okay, makita ninyo nga ay sakto ba ang iyahang pagka-present or sayop. Okay, you cannot say or you cannot evaluate their presentation without prior reading, no? So you really need to read. So kung next week, group 2 ang mag-present, I hope everyone able to understand and read already prior to attending to the synchronous class or synchronous session, the expected nga chapter to be read. Okay? So kung next meeting, group 2, I hope everyone already read chapter 2. Okay? So ina na siya. But I really admire the effort of Group 1, okay, because of course the pressure is in their ano to them because they're the first one, they are setting the standard, no? Okay? So I can really see an effort on their part. Okay? So congratulations to your group, Mary Rose, no, although not all may isa nga wala pilang no, wala naka-appeal sa inyong group, Mary Rose, si Aploy lang.
Duha, sir.
Diba?
Abog and Aploy.
Okay, abo ka na po. Okay. So I'll just give a brief explanation on how did because your topic is on um, the making of the modern world. Okay, so this is just a brief historical background of how did international relation really started. Okay, and based on the report and based on the book. Okay, when we talk of international relations, it's really started right after the Middle Ages, no? So when we talk of Middle Ages, we all know dito pa lang daan sa ato ang first year in Introduction to Social Science that was already discussed that during the Middle Ages there are two strong institutions that really fighting um, in terms of power, control, as well as sovereignty, okay, among the people. These two institutions are the church as well as the state. So these two institutions are very powerful to the point that there is already a conflict between the church as well as in the state. That is why, di ba, there is a huge debate during the Middle Ages and how are we going to establish a separation between the church and the state. And that is why those philosophers, political thinkers, that they wanted a separation between the church and the state, that the institution of the church um, should not interfere with the affairs of the church of the state. The same is true with the state will not interfere with the affairs of the church. Okay? That is why today we have this principle of separation of church and state, and it is definitely provided, explicitly provided in our very own 1987 Constitution. Kano saan nag-start? During, in the age of um, Renaissance na, kana siya nga mga period. But during the Middle Ages, wala gyud. Okay? The church is very influential institution during the time. So kano sa man gini nag-start ang Middle Ages, as what the reporter said a while ago, it started from 5th century to 15th century. Okay? Because when you will look at, nana siya dito sa inyo ang libro sa Introduction to Social Science, that the Middle Ages is divided into three stages. The early, the middle, and the late Middle Age. Then after mo na siya ang modernization, or the age of discovery, di ba? So because of that, because of the conflicting power of these two institutions, okay, dara na nag-start ang separation of church and the state. And of course, but still, even until today, you can say that the church is still very influential. But because of the power of the influence of the church during the Middle Ages, many political thinkers really wanted to have a, not only political thinkers, this is also the start of the rise of Protestantism. Okay? Silang Martin Luther King, based dito sa inyong libro sa chapter 1, di ba? So that's the start because of the, kumbaga, how the Roman Catholic Church ruled Europe at the time. Okay? The church really controls the state. Okay? There is unification between the church and the state during the Middle Ages. And then, however, okay, there is a call for a reform. Okay? Reform meaning reforma. Okay? The people, they are fighting against the church because they wanted reform. Okay? And of course, not only the people, even their leaders. Okay? Katong mga Protestant nga mga leaders, mga sovereign kings and queens during that time, they wanted reform. Reform in the sense that they wanted nga dili dapat manghilabot. Okay? Di dapat manghilabot ang simbahan sa internal affairs of the state. So on how the state should rule its people. Okay? So inana. But when we talk of international relations, it really started right after or during the Westphalian system. Now, kanang importante nga may bal-an ninyo unsang nahitabo, unsa ang mga intervening events during or prior to the establishment of the Westphalian system. It is because, go back to your history. Okay? We really need to go back because when we talk of the study of international relations, it's really started in Europe. Okay? We are dealing with European history. It is because states really started in Europe. Okay? When you will study Asia, okay, the discovery of the Asian country, kinsa may nagka-discover sa mga Asian countries, it is the Europeans, di ba? Even America, it is a former colony of the European Empire, okay? The United States is a former colony of the British Empire. India is a former colony of the British Empire. One third of the world is a former colony of the British Empire. So much more, France, Portugal, Spain, the Philippines have been colonized by the Spanish Empire. So during the Middle Ages, as well as in the Renaissance period, the most powerful nations in the world are the Europeans. Okay? So that is why international relations really started in Europe. Kung magbasa mo sa inyohang first chapter, ay nga nung gastorya man ta sa European history. Okay? Kung inyo nakita, making the title of the presentation is Making of the Modern World. And yet, when you read, basahon nimo, uy, mga European events man eh. Mga European nga mga historical events man imong mabasa, di ba? Do you agree, Mary Rose? That
Yes,
you are,
sir.
diba? It is because, okay, it was the Europeans that really established international relations. When you study political thinkers, okay, kinsa man ni sila, they're Europeans, okay? Because the study of politics really started in Europe, in fact, in Greece, di ba? During the time pa nilang Plato, nilang Aristotle, when they talk about power, when they talk about politics, when they talk about how should the state rule, okay? So, dito yun na. So, if you are a student of political science, so you really need to be well versed of history yun. Okay? Politics and history will go hand in hand so that you will know what is going on in the present if you are very aware of what really happened in the past. Okay? So, mao yun na siya. So that is why the very first topic in international relations is really going back to the historical roots of IR. Kanus ay yun siya nag-start. And makita nimo, because when we talk of IR, international relations, this is the intermingling or establishment of relations among the states of the world. But today, this is not just, we're not just talking about relationship among the states, but including non-state actors or international organizations, international non governmental organizations. Okay? So daghan mga actors in international relations dili lang nasod. But if we go back to history, the states really established IR. Again, that is right after or during the Westphalian system. So if we go back to the readings, so sa dining Westphalian system, okay? Ingon dara sa inyong libro, right, the treaty, when we talk of treaty, ang sabi ng treaty, it is an agreement. Okay? Agreement ba? Kung adunay panagtagbo sa huna-huna sa isa ka party o sa another party, panagtagbo, they agree. Okay? That's an equivalent, an agreement between states or countries is called a treaty. Okay? So because of that, nag-agree sila. As what Ira said, mo to kung di-question ka na kang Ira, paano sa gid nag-start ang international relations? Okay? Right after or during the Westphalian Treaty. Because what's their aim? Nanong naggusto man sila mag-create of international relations? As what Ira said, to end war. That's correct. Okay? War amongst the Europeans during the 15th and 16th century that started the establishment of international relations. Kaya nga naman, they wanted peace at that time. Gikapoy na sila. Kaya prior man good sa pagpirma sa Westphalian Treaty, there was a 30 years unending war among the states in Europe. And this war really produced devastations among the territories of many states like France, England, okay? Because the war, they in the war, their primary goal is to to see to it that who is the most powerful state in Europe. Okay, because during this time, this is also the age of exploration. This during the 16th century, this is the period of exploring outside territories outside Europe in search of spices to establish established trade routes, etc. That's why Ferdinand Magellan able to um, discover the East or the Philippines, not just the Philippines, okay, including the southern part of America, okay, the Latin America, okay, and of course, not only Ferdinand Magellan were considered discoverers during the age of discovery, okay, including the English, the Dutch, okay, naka-discover na sila not only in Asia but of course the English able to conquer the Americas as well as Africa as well as India, okay, and some parts of Asia as well as the Dutch able to conquer some parts of Southeast Asia, okay, etc. So kumbaga kani nga mga nasod sa Europe nag-compete sila para mapakita nila kinsa ang mas powerful nga nasod. And aside from gasend sila og kanang mga expeditions to show to the world that they are powerful, nakakanker sila og new territory, aside from that, they are fighting against each other. Okay? And it was ended by virtue of a treaty. Okay? They sent diplomats. Ay, kaniyang mayo, no nila. Kaya naman, when you have a war, of course, you are, kumbaga, spending much of your resources just to protect your territory. Di ba? You're spending money to finance your war. So, because of that, kumbaga, kapoy na ba? Okay? Namatay na lang ang isa ka generation sa ruler, ang next generation naka-inherit gyapon sa war, ang mga kings, okay? Because of that, they wanted to establish ay sa may I excuse for a while na naigapanawag. Wait lang for a minute. Hi. Sorry for that na. So, mga okay? Because of the war among the European countries or European states, they wanted to end it. By what virtue? By virtue of a treaty. Okay? So that mere agreement of what we called as the Westphalian Treaty, that started the establishment of what we called as international relations. Okay? Because like for example, na-mention dito kagaya now, First World War and Second World War. Okay? right after the Westphalian Treaty, another war happened in Europe. Okay? Another war, and that is what we called as the First World War. Okay? Right after, kay inani mo gud kita po, every war, there is, after the war, there is an agreement that they wanted to establish peace among themselves. Okay? Right after the First World War, what happened? That was the establishment of the League of Nations, which is the an organization prior to the establishment of the United Nations. Now, right after the First World War, here comes another World War, which is the Second World War, happened in 1940s to 1946. Kung sa man din ang nahitabo na pod nga agreement, that is the establishment of the United Nations. And after the establishment of the United Nations, somehow, from 1946 until the present, walay nahitabo nga another World War. It is because the nine somehow 198 countries in the world really come to think of it that they are, kumbaga, di sila gusto to have another world war because of their commitment to international law, because of their commitment to what they have signed in the establishment of the United Nations. Okay? So unsa may primary purpose di ay anang UN ngano na-establish man na siya. There's no other reason but to stop the occurrence of another world war. So and since since August rather, not August, October of 1946, when the time that the United Nations was established until this very day, okay, this 198 or so on ng mga nasod that are members of the United Nations, they're considered as peace-loving country. But of course, as what the reporter said a while ago, I think that was Miss Anyora. Why is it that although in the international politics, you treat every country equal regardless of how wealthy the country is, regardless of the number of its population, regardless of the size of its territory? Yes, it is because in international politics, if there is a decision that they wanted to like for example in the United Nations, every country is accorded only with one vote. Okay, regardless of the status of your how wealthy is your country is. So, like for example, international setting, the Philippines is just equal with the United States. Kung naay one vote ang United States in the in the United Nations, napoy one vote ang Philippines. So inana siya. However, of course, you cannot also deny the fact that these powerful countries really control, okay, of, even though there is already independence among these not so wealthy country or developing states in the world, like for example the Philippines, you cannot deny the fact that there is also somehow control the politics between the developed countries as well as the developing countries. Okay, of course, the developed countries are very influential in the international setting. Okay? For example, today, if you look at what happened in terms of the vaccines that arrived in the Philippines, the first vaccine that arrived in the Philippines is a donation. The first two groups of vaccines that arrived in the country is a donation. The first group, of course, the donation coming from China. Okay, and another group, the AstraZeneca, is also a donation of the countries in Europe, which are the former colonizers. Okay, this group are the members of the European Union or EU. Okay, so inana siya. So um mo na siya, no, ang history or dynamics sa international relations. I know daghan pa kayo tag matun-an dire. aning a subject. This because this is very kuan baga. Although very interesting, although you really need to read, okay, of course. And by reading, makonect na nimo siya of what is um, going on in the international relations in the modern world. Okay? So inana siya. So I hope that you've learned something today from the report of Group 1. Okay? Because their report is very important because this is the foundation of international relations. Okay? Yes, somebody is raising his hand. We have Jalil first, then Freya later on. Yes, Jalil Mandol, you are recognized. Mandol?
Kuan sir na natuplok lang sir, alam ko kabantay sir.
Ano to plukan? Yes, Freya.
Yes, sir. Does studying international relations a great way to gain a deeper understanding of global issues, even though it started way back on Middle Ages?
Yeah. Mhm. And then,
And another thing, sir, why is it that China was considered as the first modern state?
based from
Uh, Google that I read, sir.
Google. Is it it's not based from the book that we provided, that I
Yes, sir.
provided?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
sir. That's why I'm wondering why is it different.
Okay. Now, kindly mute your ano. Okay, thank you for that question, Free. Ano. Although we are talking about European history when we discuss international relations, but we cannot deny the fact that during the Middle Ages as well as the Age of Discovery, human beings are already established settlement in this part of the world. I'm talking about Asia. That's why is it that the Chinese civilization was really not that kumbaga popular during this time. Ngano man, it is because kinsa may una nga nag-start og gama og libro. Kinsa may una nga nag-start og gama og history. Okay? It is the Europeans. But you cannot deny the fact that the Chinese civilization was already, kumbaga, flourishing during this period also. And China is just a sleeping giant. Okay? You cannot deny the fact that China is not China's history, China's civilization has no importance in the establishment of international relations by mere studying the history of China, they are the first even prior to the coming of the Spaniards. There's already a relationship between Chinese traders and the Filipino traders during that time prior to the coming of the Europeans in the country. Kano sa niabot si Magellan? 1621, di ba? But based on the historical accounts of the Spaniards, there is already an established trading route between the Philippines and China prior to their coming here in the islands. So that is why China's civilization was already flourishing even prior to the establishment of European colonization. So mo na nga in terms of civilization and flourishment of international relations, you cannot deny the fact that China is also have influence, kumbaga, inana siya. Okay? Even until today. That is why when you look at the structure later on, we will have a some of the reports will discuss on the structure of the United Nations. Dara sa UN, makita ninyo na ay mga permanent members. Okay? When we talk of permanent members, muna sila ang Big Five. Big Five. We have China, UK, US, France, okay? Kana sila na sila yung veto power in the UN. Okay? When we talk of veto power, kung naamanggaling dili na ay policy that the United Nations will decide on, these 5 member states has the power to stop uh, that decision. Okay? Tingnan naman. Halimbawa, the United Nations have a kumbaga policy to end, like for example, what happened during the Middle East crisis in the year 2000, when the United States have a unilateral action against Iraq when the time during the time of Saddam Hussein. The United Nations have no action regarding that matter. It is because Russia and China did not vote, okay, did not cast their vote in the United Nations to stop the to have a an action against the Iraqi government during that time in order to stop the chaos or war in Iraq during that time. Okay? Kani si China manggod og si Russia, they are best friend. And then UK, US and France, sila ang magka-best friend pod, okay? Sa international politics. So because of that, once na ay gusto sila i-decide sa UN against dayon ni si Russia o si China sa policy nga gusto buhaton sa US, UK and France, way mabuhat ang United Nations. But that's why later on daghan pa kay tag mahibalan, no, daghan pa kay tag mahibalan in the dynamics of international politics. Okay, inana siya. Okay, I know daghan pa kayo mo gusto mahibalan regarding because this is really very an interesting subject. Okay, how power and politics is being played in the international arena. Kaya usually kung kita politics, sanay man kaita sa politika diri sa atong kaugalingong nasud, but how power and politics evolved in the international setting. Okay, thank you. Yes, Elmer Dulotalias. You're recognized, Elmer. You're raising your hand, Elmer.
No, sir. Natuplok lang, sir.
Natuplok lang.
Yes, sir.
Kinsa pa? Kinsa pa na ay erase. So, group 2, kinsa kay itong leader sa group 2?
Yes, hello, sir.
Rose Jean, Kabangbang. Give me an
Lain
update.
na sa loob.
Update, Rose Jane, sa inyong inyong group.
Yes, sir.
Sige, ansa na inyong development? Nag-meet na mo? Nag-start na ba mo sa inyong presentation?
Humana among PPT, sir, about sa kanang diplomacy and everything. Pero wala pa may ka-practice o kanang Google Meet. Karon gabi daw may magkuan kay naman po trabaho ang uban. So, unya pa may gabi maka ang lugar.
Okay. So, inana lang. Anytime next week, I will just post the schedule, no, kanos ata mga kuan. Kay of course naapod ko yung mga po, tanaw na ko kanos ko vacant kay namon po yung mga activities go diri sa office. So, inana, I will just post some, but inana gakitabo either Friday or Thursday gid ang atong meeting. Okay, inana lang. Friday or Thursday. As to the time, ato pa na siyang i-check kung kanasa. So, as much as possible by Wednesday next week, Rojin, ready na mo ha? Kay kamo ang next nga group. Okay, so I encourage you to practice good. Mag-Google Meet mo kamo nga grupo prior to the presentation. Para pareha ning kuan, group 1 smooth lang ta. Walay technical glitches, etc. Inana lang. Okay? So again,
Kuan lang, sir, ba?
yes, Ira.
Kanang every Thursday, mong good sir, kanang 10:30 to 12 kay na may klase.
Unsa yung klase ana?
kang sir, kuan sa ethics
Ay,
na mo sir.
sir.
Nagyaw-yaw gani siya karon dito sa Google Meet namo.
Kita inyong ethics.
Si Sir Carbon sir.
Sir,
So Friday na lang ta.
Vicente Carbon,
Okay ra mo
sir.
Friday.
Okay ra man ang Friday sir, ambot sa uban.
How about di ka mo nga group
Pero,
Rogin? Wala may klase.
Okay ra, sir. Pero
Sige,
na
ano na lang
atong
ta.
Datoy kuan sir kanang other nga ka-group namo nga dili namo ka-block bitaw. Wala pud ko kabalo sa iyang schedule kung parehas ba may or dili si Caceres.
Kani silang group kani si Caceres na diri.
Okay ra na si Kasere sir, kauban naman naman na nga
Open
block.
yun mo ni. Si okay ra. So, ano na lang bro. Kay kuan man good, usahay napoy activity diri sa office ba? Maong ako ang ginatansya pod kung kano sa ako bakante. Okay? So, kung mag-post ko schedule kano sa natong next meeting, kung di mo available kay na mo klase, just inform me para ma-reset na tong time. Ina na lang. Okay? So, thank you very much for coming. And again, congratulations to Group 1. Congratulations to the group of Mary Rose. Okay? So,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
I will post
Thank
the
you.
recording later. Mary Rose, don't forget to post the PowerPoint in our group ha, so that others can also makita nila yung presentation. Okay?
Okay, sir.
Ay,
Okay, so,
then, sir. Kadjut lang. Si Abok, sir ba? Nag-send siya og kanang video na lang niya, sir, nga nag-report siya. Kay dili siya kasulod sa kuan, diri sa Google Meet.
send.
Nasa sa GC, tapos isabay na lang namo og send sa PPT para dito sa group page.
Okay, ano na lang.
Okay. Sige,
Post
sir. Thank you kay sir.
dito para magraduan ako sa. Okay? Sige.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Ay, Mary Rose,
Yes, sir.
kaning nag-record ka?
Sir?
Imo ning gi-record karon?
Wala ko kabalo, sir, na
Inani
murag.
na-record man yun siya. Ang katong
Oh.
recording, i-send na lang sa ako. I-call mo na siya sa imong email. I-send na siya sa imong email. I-forward lang din sa ako. Para ma-download na ako.
Okay, sir.
Okay.